Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining our live stream today. I have some friends joining us as we are discussing mythology in audio drama. There are a couple of us, so I want to make sure we have time for introduction. So I will just go down the list. Today we have Isabella from Echo Box. Isabella, do you want to give a quick introduction about your show?
Yeah. Hi, guys. I'm Isabella, as you said. I am the showrunner of Echo Box, which is basically what I like to pitch as Gossip Girl meets Greek myths. Echo is our main character. She is Zeus' personal assistant. And the Olympian family is the biggest celebrity family, like the Kardashians for us. And she knows all their secrets, and she's spilling them all online, radio casting it for everyone who wants to listen.
Yes, it's a very, very juicy gossip.
Very juicy gossip, yes.
It's crazy how gossip from way back in ancient Greece can be translated to modern times, and we still love the tea.
I think that the most fun we have is getting the old myths and being like, oh, we can do that and like lick a nude or some shit like that. And it's so fun to put that, and it works. And we all know the story goes, and we still go for it.
Yeah, and then we also have another one who's also doing a reimagining Friday Night Fights with Hannah here.
Yeah, so hi guys. Thanks for tuning in. So our podcast is Friday Night Fights. That is like Kniggets, like night with a K.
Kniggets,
yeah. My partner in crime on Friday Night Fights, Ashton, hates when I say Kniggets. So Ashton, if you're out there, that was for you. So Friday Night Fights is a modern day retelling of the King Arthur stories. So it follows Arthur Padrone, who is the reincarnation of the King Arthur, and he is on a mission with the reincarnation of Lancelot and Merlin to find all of the Knights of the Round Table and kind of bring them into the fold before something bad happens to them. There's a villain on their trail. They ride around the country on motorcycles. They keep Excalibur in a guitar case. And no, Arthur does not play the guitar, and he is tired of people asking him.
Does he ever? I'm only halfway through, but does he ever get guitar lessons?
Also, I don't want to spoil it. But I mean, I think he should, because it would make his life easier.
I do think that's the most Arthur thing, not knowing how to use Excalibur.
He's a himbo in our podcast.
He's so sweet.
He's got a heart of gold. He's got big muscles, a heart of gold, and he's dumb.
The perfect protagonist.
Yeah.
So I do want to say Ashton was here, and she says, I am out here, and I did hate it when you said
For you, Ashton.
And then we also have Dan from the Luchador. I know you have a longer title, but
yes.
I'll leave it to you to say.
I'm Dan Valera Fletcher. I'm the creator, executive producer of Luchador, 1000 Fights of El Fuego Fuerte, or just the Luchador podcast for short. And we are not necessarily a reimagining, but just a revitalization of the classic luchador films that were made in Mexico in the 1960s and 1970s that starred, these classic larger-than-life wrestlers / superheroes like El Santo, Blue Demon, Mil Máscaras, Huracan. And these amazing films that were made back then when Mexico had this really big boom period where the wrestlers would fight gangsters, vampires, mummies, Frankenstein's monster, all this stuff, and it was these modern myths, and we also bring in on our show. Our first season deals with Aztec mythology as well, so we got multiple layers going on.
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, that was actually going to be one of my questions for you, Dan, was that were you going to expand the universe with your creatures? Oh,
yeah. That sounds so amazing.
The podcast is really good. If you have not listened to it, please do. It's awesome.
And then I will give a quick introduction about my podcast. Hopefully you know who I am if you're here on my live stream, but I am the creator of Residents of Persephone Park. We are obviously a mythological podcast with a park filled with mythological creatures, and we kind of go over myths from all over the world with a plot that's as crazy as the legends themselves. So obviously the big question that I want to bring you guys all here today is, what drew you to mythology for an audio medium format?
I think I can.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, go
No,
on.
go for it.
I was also always obsessed with mythology ever since I was a kid. Thanks Percy Jackson books, I guess, because I love them so much. They were such a big part of my childhood and teenage years. And I am still obsessed with Greek mythology, as you can probably tell. Like, I have a tattoo of Greek mythology, and I always, as a writer, I always wanted to do a retelling. But I think that what really sparked the thing of Echo Box was I got the love I have for Greek mythology with the love I have for audio drama. I think a lot of people can relate when I say that Welcome to Night Vale was my first audio drama. And I was so obsessed with Cecil because he was such a snarky main character, and she talks everyone in his town all the time, and he's so bitchy, and I was like, that's the kind of thing I want to do. So I got Echo, which is a myth that I always loved, which is a quiet nymph that has no voice for herself, and I kind of wanted to twist that up and make her be the bringer of chaos. So like, mostly what and this story wouldn't work on prose. It wouldn't work as a book. It had to be like Echo's voice telling you those stories, like, mostly.
Yeah, I do enjoy it with Echo Box. It's kind of like your friend sitting down and like literally gossiping with you, and you can't do that over text. You can't do that over text. You got to tell me.
And I think, especially with the Greek myths, I think it comes a lot with the oral tradition of the myths too. So like they did that 1,000 years ago, and we're doing it now. So true, but they didn't use podcasts.
Yes,
that's true.
They would today.
They would.
Oh, they absolutely would.
Odysseus would totally have a podcast where he just talks mad shit.
He would have the longest podcast running.
They would be so obnoxious.
Each episode would be like 2.5 hours, and that's the edited version.
I'll jump on the question as well, because just because for me, like, yeah, it was kind of a circuitous route to get there. Like, I always loved mythology, Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, everything. And my sister actually ended up studying Mesoamerican cultures in college, and it was a way for her to kind of connect to our shared Mexican roots and heritage, and it was a big inspiration for me. And as I got into the wrestling thing, because like I was listening to a lot of old timey radio shows, like stuff like The Shadow and like the old like Batman serials and stuff like that, where like you could really have this like kind of lively adventure show in an audio format. And it's like, oh man, there's not a lot out there. And I wonder, like, ooh, like in the Mexican wrestling lucha libre correlation just kind of popped into my head, because it's something I'd always been interested in as well. And then like just adding that extra layer to it, the extra depth of like just the deeper history of like modern myths of these masked wrestlers who have all this iconography and ritual around them in the same way that more ancient cultures did. Like it felt like just a perfect marriage. And for anyone else who's a wrestling fan, it's also a nod to this really, really amazing short-lived wrestling show called Lucha Underground, which was on Robert Rodriguez's El Rey network, where they tapped into it a little bit, and I miss that show so much. So it's kind of my way to bring it back to life a little bit.
Yeah, and I know I listened to I think you did an interview after the first episode of the Luchador. You had a question for yourself as whether wrestling could translate in an audio drama. I'm just curious, now that you finished the season, have you found that answer?
I think so. It's funny. Like there's definitely a limit. I think that I think our season finale had like the longest wrestling match, and I think the match itself goes on for like more than 20 minutes. And I think we're kind of stretching a little bit because there was a lot of back and forth and a lot of twists and turns, and you really need to make sure you're laying a really strong groundwork audibly
Orally?
creating a sound so that no one's getting confused about what's supposed to be happening, what and where. So it's really tricky, and definitely, like, as we're doing season 2, we're trying to find the sweet spot for it. But I do think it is fun, and people definitely have given the feedback that, like, they really felt like they were there. They felt like they could see what was happening, and kind of it made it come alive. And our sound designer did some really awesome work. Recording all the physical stuff that happens, and our actors, like, after every session we record, we do all their lines. Okay, and then we're going to do just a bunch of effort, a bunch of grunts.
Oh God, the effort recording.
Now you're throwing a punch. Now you're taking a punch. Now you're getting, like, eaten by a giant snake. Now it's pretty wild.
Yeah, that sounds like so much fun, though.
The last episode of your podcast yet, but I really liked how you had like the ring announcer kind of telling us like what was going on. Like, especially when you're like watching wrestling on TV, like the commentators' voices are such a huge part of it. And you can kind of love them, you can kind of hate them, but they're like a big part of the experience when you're not at the ring, like when you're watching at home. And so I really liked like that aspect of bringing it. I thought that was really clever of how to kind of show us what was going on.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I think I said that in that like interview episode I did as well, where it's like, because like growing up, like, wrestling, they'd have the big shows every month, which were on pay-per-view, and you could watch the regular stuff on TV for free. But as a kid, like, you'd have to convince your parents every month to give you like $60 to watch more wrestling. It's like, you watch so much wrestling already. Why am I going to spend a bunch of money? But back in the day, you could switch to the pay-per-view channels on your TV, and you'd just see a bunch of static, but you could still hear the audio. So I sometimes, like, when I couldn't convince my parents, I'd go and switch to the channels and listen to the whole show, just through the ring announcers and through the audio. I'm like, okay, like, so that's you can definitely tell how they're building the
don't know how difficult it was for us back then.
I do feel like that you need to call your parents and thank them for you not convincing them, because I do feel like this is a big part of why you're able to do such amazing things like that.
No, I owe them everything. I had great parents. They did not deprive me. No shame.
Hannah, what about you? How do you feel about translating mythology to audio dramas?
So for us, so I'm kind of the co-creator of Friday Night Fights. Ashton is the one who originally conceived of the idea and originally imagined it as a comic, and was started writing it. Well, I remember when she first came up with the idea, she's like, wouldn't this be a fun TV show? And then when she got like more serious about writing it, she was thinking about, okay, well, a comic, this would be really cool. But then the comic stuff wasn't like fully feasible. And also a lot of us in the cast just really like podcasts. And we knew that doing an audio medium was something that was feasible for us, and something that we could actually do. despite grief with microphones and recording sessions, that it was more accessible for us from a creative standpoint to do an audio drama. And it was a lot of hours of me taking the entire script and turning it from something that was written for like visual, like half written for a comic, half written for a TV show, and then turning it into a script for an audio drama. It was challenging at some points because we also have like action scenes and things like that. Like this is about the Knights of the Round Table. They fight things, they go on adventures, they're riding motorcycles. Like there's a lot of things that are really that were really visual, that were like integral to the story. That some of it was a challenge to turn into. How do we envision this as an audio medium? Like we can't see it. So what do we do? But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun work. It was before I was in my PhD program. So I had a lot of time to devote to it. But yeah, it was kind of a necessity thing. Also just a love for the medium of podcasts, just throwing ourselves in there.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of the few forums where you can, I don't know if you guys do ensemble recordings or not, but it's one of the few things where you can actually like get together and collaborate and make something like right then and there, versus like with a comic, it's kind of a one person does this, then the next person type of feel. So it is nice, especially, are we all pandemic podcasts? I feel like for me, I needed to hear people. So I was like, hey, you're my friend. You have a mic. Let's do this. Let's go.
Yeah, all of our production really happened during the Rona times. The script, was in work for pre-COVID. And I was doing edits on it pre-COVID, but a lot of the actual like production, a lot of pre-production was pre-COVID, but the production and post-production has all been COVID. And not everybody, we have a pretty large cast. There's 12 people that are main characters, as well as some other like friends and collaborators of ours that come in for minor characters, and not everyone had a mic. And our wonderful audio guy, as we call him, Tyler Ganelli, who wrote all the original music for the podcast, who did all of the sound design for the podcast. He had standards. Our mics had to meet a certain standard. So coordinating that during the pandemic got tricky sometimes, especially before the vaccine. Once everyone got vaccinated, things were a little easier, but we also were kind of all over the place. Isabella was talking about coordinating time zones before we started the stream. That was definitely a struggle for us too. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Delaware. Ashton is in Idaho. So there's like some people that are in Idaho. There's some of us on the East Coast, but of course, conveniently not in the same place. We had some Pacific time zone people. We were in all like 4 American time zones, which was a challenge, but also because of COVID, sometimes easier when we're working from home. So, yeah.
EchoBox was entirely utilized on pandemic too, but also I think regardless, I would have this coordination struggle because I'm not even in the US. I am Brazil, so like my cast, I have people from Colombia on my cast. I have a friend from Brazil too. I have someone in Canada. I have the Americans. I have like people from all over the world technically in the podcast. So really, coordinating was really hard. The mic thing was so hard for me to get a proper mic set, considering finding the proper mic in Brazil. Because not all the resources are not the same, this sort of thing. So like it was very hard coordinating stuff, but I'm getting the hang of it more and more. I know now all American time zones off the top of my head, even though I'm not in the US.
Yeah, we were actually a recorded the majority of our stuff pre-pandemic and had a very long post-production process that the pandemic definitely got in the way of. Like our poor sound designer was moving around from country to country, trying to like keep his head above water. I think, yeah, he did some of his work from London, some of his work from Berlin, Germany, some of it from New York. We then we re-recorded a bunch of stuff, like, you know, to kind of keep everything on the same level. We had some great last minute casts come aboard. So like one of the things for people who haven't listened yet, we have a bunch of real professional wrestlers, both masked and unmasked, who do guest spots, guest roles in the show, and we were able to get some great folks in at the very last minute. We're like, oh man, we got to record them, and it was really cool. For any wrestling fans out there, folks like Dan Housen, who's currently on AEW, Luchasaurus, Effie, Lufisto, who's a great Canadian women's wrestler, Colt Cabana, who am I forgetting? Big Calix is another great guy. He's a great mass wrestler on the indie scene. And it's really cool. The folks were able to come in and do these fun voices for us. They all had a blast doing it, so it was really cool. And none of them had to hurt themselves. They were very excited to be able to, to perform without
put on the persona without getting punched.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so nice to hear that they were excited to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah. No voice actors got hurt.
Have a disclaimer. And then
no bumps were taken in the making of this podcast.
I think I mentioned before with my podcast, I really did just grab all my friends who had mics and was like, can you record this for me? So I was very lucky, at least for season 1, we were all in the same time zone, at least. And then season 2, we started branching out. I was like, oh, frick, okay, gotta remember that. And season 3, we will probably branch out even more. So it's a good learning process to see how much I can handle.
Yeah, I also think that, like, with mythology, like, they have big pantheons, and you kind of want to work with all these stories. So it's so hard to be like, I know that for season 2, me and Core, who Core is my producer, co-writer, co-director, co-everything. She we wrote the season, and then after we finished the season, we were like, damn, we're gonna have to cast a lot of people. But we didn't want to give up the myths that we chosen for season 2, which was Hades, Persephone, Eurydice, which is Angela herself, who plays her. Orpheus. So like it's just how it is, with mythology. I think we have the pantheon and we want to work with it.
Yes. And then I kind of want to skip around because we already started talking about this a little bit, but like modernizing mythology. We all modernized differently, but we all have modernized myths. And I do want to ask why, I think some of you might have already said this, but why you chose specific mythologies and why you wanted to adapt them to modern times. I know Isabella was already talking about the pantheons and how the Greek mythology was basically soap operas back in the day, and it is still a soap opera now. So it is interesting how we can adapt, and some things stay the same and some things don't. So was there anything you actually, Isabella, when you were writing and directing, you realized you had to change a lot for modern times?
I think that when you think about Greek myths, they are a product of their time, so they are very sexist, and like women get assaulted, abused, killed, sacrificed, etc., etc., etc. during every myth, basically. So I think what we try to do mostly with Echobox is take those myths of the women and try to give them more voice, which is exactly why I chose Echo. Like I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with Echo myth, but she's a nymph, she gets punished because she helps Zeus cheat on Hera. So Hera punishes her that she can never speak again. She can always say stuff back to people, and that's why she's Echo. So like the giving her voice back was already a start, but during season 1 we take the character of Hera, which is the goddess of marriage, who is scorned by Zeus and cheated by him countless times, and we try to give her a little more power and agency. And I think that's mostly what we've been doing and what we want to do with season 2 too, and something that we always think about when we're doing this, because we also have I think it's valid to do the dark retellings with like Hades and Persephone, Hades kidnapping Persephone, which is the original myth. But I think you can also give the female characters agency throughout it, and also making everything more queer is basically what we always want. So everyone's queer, and that's basically it.
I will say that it was very smart. I am a big Artemis stan, so when Artemis came in and there was a little bit of connection between Artemis and Echo, I was like, if I were a Greek mythology, I would do the same exact thing.
Well, Artemis has a lot of nymph friends, so I was like, wow, we're doing this.
Nymph friends.
Friends, just gal pals.
And then Hannah with FKF, all the characters are teenage young adults. What is that like turning these loyal knights of the round table into like worried about test grades and socializing and not being awkward?
Oh, they can't avoid being awkward. That's just is. I mean, I think that's something a lot of the characters are dealing with, how to balance this past life that lives in their head with their current life. My character, so I co-wrote the podcast, I edited it, I directed it, and I'm also in it. I play one of the knights, Poppy, and her kind of journey in this season is trying to reconcile being her own person, and also getting the gang back together. She's very hesitant and quite resistant of accepting that she has this past life and that Arthur wants her to be part of the squad, because she has her own life. She's lived her modern life without these memories for, I guess she's like 18 at the first season. And so she has to grapple with that. But some things just kind of transfer over in fun ways. Like, instead of meeting around the round table, they have a coffee shop that they meet up in, and they love to move the tables into a circle kind of without thinking, much to the chagrin of the cafe owner. They don't have meetings. They have a group chat called Artie's IBS, because they have to make fun of Arthur a lot. They love to kind of do crazy things because they're knights. They get the adrenaline pumping. Some of them like to, one of the characters, Jerry, is kind of crazy. He loves to throw like big parties. They love to like get the blood pumping. So some things kind of just the general experiences kind of translate, but some stuff like knowing how to build a working catapult, like one of the knights knows how to do, still doesn't quite translate. But it kind of leads to moments where they're kind of hilariously clashing with modern society. Like, oh, hey, someone's attacking, no problem. Let me build a catapult here on our college campus.
As one does.
But they don't want people to know, like, hold on, put Excalibur away. We don't want people looking at us weird. But they're a bunch of knights that are now in college without supervision, and they're loud. So it's kind of hard to avoid detection.
But the shenanigans.
We love
so much
shenanigans.
fun.
We love shenanigans. There's so many times when we were recording where we would like ad lib something or be like, what if we said this? Like, no, is that too much? Like, is that Is that too much? So sometimes it would make it in, and sometimes we're like, no, that would be, we can't, we gotta restrain ourselves.
Having to take the step back is something that me and Car, my writer, also did a lot, because sometimes we would write the Echo Box segments, which is when Echo is Echo herself, and we will just spill all the tea, and then we'll take a step back and be like, we're being a little too mean. A little too mean. We need to step back a little bit.
You're gonna hurt some feelings.
Yeah. No, it's okay to hurt some feelings, but we were hurting even more. But it's very fun to ad lib with the cast and translate, like you said, like the round table at the coffee shop is just such a fun detail that shows how much we care for the Smiths, and then we get little snippets and put them in the modern world. And like maybe not everyone will notice them, but we do sprinkle them in throughout the episodes.
Yeah, and I did want to say, Dan, you obviously chose a lesser known mythological creature, the Sewatateo. And I believe you also modernized them a little bit to fit more of the vampire style most Americans are familiar with. What was that process like? And I guess I'm curious to know like why you chose those creatures specifically to fight against luchadors. And yeah, just basically that.
Yeah, it was again. It's that melding of the Aztec mythology with the Lucha Libre mythology. In that, I believe it was his first film, the most famous luchador El Santo. He wears like a silver mask. You can kind of find him at like toy shops and posters kind of all over the place if you go to Mexico even today. And yeah, I think it was his first movie was El Santo versus Los Mujeres Vampiros, so versus the vampire women, and they were contemporary, like Dracula, Brides of Dracula inspired vampires. And I wanted to take that and then draw it back to to the myth of the Cihuateteo, who had a slightly different role, almost a more heroic role in Aztec mythology, and kind of play with the idea of how they would function kind of out of place in a more modern world. And it kind of ties into the arc of the main character, El Fuego Fuerte, who is almost an El Santo type, who is very, very strict, lives very much by the rules, by the code of Lucha Libre, and he finds that always at odds with having to make the right choice versus the best choice to exist in a more complicated 3D world, at least as far as our podcast goes. But and so the Cihuateteo, definitely they are the antagonists in the show. But I definitely wanted them to have a strong point of view, and you could very much see them being right, because they're playing a role for their god. And anyway, so the Cihuateteo, for people that don't know, are Aztec kind of warrior spirits who were women who died in childbirth, which is basically the equivalent, like in Norse mythology. If you die in battle, you go to Valhalla. The Aztecs did a very similar thing, but for women, dying in childbirth was the equivalent of dying in battle
in the battlefield. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for them, they were raised to a very exalted place in the afterlife. And so it's them kind of brought into the modern world, kind of finding their modern equivalents of warriors, which they find in Mexican wrestlers, because that's the world we're playing in. And and it was really cool. And so and then there are a couple more gods that show up, and we're doing some fun stuff with season 2.
I'm so excited.
But
It's interesting to see how myths also travel. I didn't realize that luchadors had fought against mythological creatures way before art and back in the day. So it's interesting to know that like people have always known about vampires, people have always known about like werewolves and zombies. There's always like some kind of undead creature out there that we are all familiar with. And it's interesting to see how we have always taken it and modernized it in some way, even back in the 60s. Oh, we have a kitty guest.
Sorry, I have two kitties. This is Baron and
Hi,
Luthien
Baron.
is sleeping, but they can sense when mommy is on the computer and mommy is
Always.
on Zoom, and they don't care for that. They don't care for that. Dan, I actually wanted to ask, is season 2, are you staying with the Aztec mythology, or are you guys bringing in like other mythological systems?
The Aztec mythology will return in a fun way, and then we're mixing in. We'll talk about it. I don't know how many folks are on the call, so I'm not too worried about this, but we're playing around with kind of more contemporary, not contemporary, but like 20th century. Oh gosh, why am I blanking out the word? Not brujeria, but like alchemy and kind of modern witchcraft stuff in both Mexico and Spain, and then we're going to touch on some fun South American cryptids as well.
Ooh, I know Brazil has some wild ones.
We do. We have a few who are memes, but we also have the cryptids.
I will say one thing. So my podcast is all mostly creatures. So we are more like beasts and animals than humanoids. So one thing I had to learn very quickly, I think it was actually an Aztec creature as well, the ahuizotl, which is like a lizard dog creature. That I had no idea what a lizard dog creature would sound like. So that was a fun 2 weeks of my life where I was playing around in sound design and figuring out, this is a lizard dog creature that drowns people and maybe takes them to water heaven or just straight up kills them. And I ended up choosing a very cute sound for a very mean creature.
But I think like folklore and mythology in South America is very focused on protecting nature. So we have a lot of drawing hunters, making hunters get lost, burning up hunters. I here in Brazil, and I bet that in other mythologies around us too. So Aztec too. Then I wanted to just note that I think it's so cool that what you said about, I am not very familiar with wrestling culture or lucha libre culture, but from what you said, basically these guys are mythological creatures, not only in your podcast but also how they are. And I think that's just so fascinating. Like, we have the gods, but we also now have these lucha libre wrestlers, and like that's why I made in Box, I made them be celebrities, because the celebrities are mythos right now. So I really think that it's fascinating how human mythology has been evolving with I hit my pop filter, evolving with human culture.
We're always like looking for models to follow, both positive and negative. That's why so many Greek myths especially are, basically warnings of things like, don't do this, you're gonna you're gonna get turned into something, or blown off course onto something, or get shot in the ankle or whatever. It's and I think we do that with our celebrities as well, because you don't want to wind up as the I think there's a saying like, every day Twitter has a main character and you never want it to be you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Bean Dad. Won't forget Bean Dad. That was a good one. I mean, I think that we kind of modern mythology that we see right now, especially in the West, is superheroes, especially with the popularity of the MCU. They are it's a mythology. It has it has its
As lore.
archetype. Yeah.
Literally the study the MCU nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, part of so I mentioned before I'm a PhD student in English literature at University of Delaware. And part of my job as a PhD student is not just to do all my research, which is about queer contemporary adaptations of Greek mythology. But I also teach. So I teach a freshman writing composition seminar. And I teach my class. So I used to teach it about Owen Wilson because I have seen every Owen Wilson movie. And why not? So my class used to be about Owen Wilson, but I changed it to superheroes. And one of the things that I kind of challenge my students to think about, and something that we discuss explicitly, is what are the characteristics of superheroes as mythology. I always ask them, okay, so when I say mythology, what do you think of? And they always say, like Greek mythology. I'm like, okay, so pretend that superheroes it's just like Greek mythology, but these are our characters. What would we say are the traits, like the characteristics of that mythology? And the whole point of the exercise is to get them to realize how white, cisgender, heterosexual, male oriented and male dominated it is. But I think that a lot of people don't make that explicit connection between Hercules, Achilles, Odysseus, and
Iron Man,
Luchador and Captain America. They're all running in the same kind of circle.
Yeah. They all have origin stories. They all have rivals. They all have famous victories that they've won and lost, and they all have weaknesses. It's all in the same pool.
They all have their special object, like Excalibur or the shield. So.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's interesting with wrestling too. There's the concept of kayfabe, which is what is canon in the wrestling story. And so there are characters that have this whole mythos really about them, and some of them are kind of funny and some of them aren't that different from the real person, but some of them are. I mean, Dan Luchasaurus is on your podcast. He's a 65 million year old dinosaur and he wrestles.
Yeah, with a PhD.
Yeah. With a PhD in medieval literature, I believe it is. I
believe so. Or
which is relatable for me. So, but yeah, that's his mythology. That's his story. Mm-hmm. He gets in, all of these different battles with with other people, with other heroes or other villains.
Yeah, no, and it's great, and it's there's always different interpretations, like the Greek myths. I know, if you lined up all the different, I'm blanking on all, whatever Homer said about this god doesn't match up with what.
No. Yeah, that actually happens, and it's kind of something that I also wanted to bring to the table about adapting myths, especially Greek myths. I understand that when we take something as close and personal to you, like Aztec mythology, for you, then there's something how it was destroyed by colonizers. There's something that about respecting the origins that is different when you're doing Greek mythology, because Greek mythology, it was also political satire. So basically, the myth that Poseidon raped Medusa, there's not actually, the only source we have from that is that someone made this comment on a speech, and they were probably talking about a political man at the time. So they used the myths to do political satire, and this is the source that we have today. So if I don't like a Greek myth, I can be just I don't need to follow this. I don't need to follow it to a T, because it's impossible, and because we have so many different sources that say different things, and because it was mostly written by men in power as well.
Yeah, there's definitely
versions that we have are also some of these things have been lost, and what we have of like Greco-Roman mythology is just what texts, like especially like
Survived.
late antiquity and medieval, like what texts literally survived, and also which text the scribes copied. So we have that to contend with as well. I'm sorry, Angela, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, totally fine. No, yeah, I just remembered, was it Mount Vesuvius when they found like two dead human statues together, and historians were like, oh, they were friends, even though they were like on top of each other or something. And it's like, yeah, like depending on who's telling the story, viewpoints can very easily change with just one word.
Yeah, just like we were talking about earlier about Artemis. Like, I'm sorry, but if she's a Greek goddess
she was
who just wants to be with girls and she doesn't like men, I have a word for that too.
Yeah, gal pals. That's what they're looking for, right?
They're just very good friends.
Yeah, they're great friends. Sure, Jan.
And I do want to switch over right now. We have been talking about 45 minutes now to the industry and the community as a whole, and how we can, as mythology audio dramas, bring more awareness of our shows and just like support each other's in a lot of way. Because I think when we first started, before the live stream started, we were chatting about like, oh, like I had so much difficulty finding you guys, not gonna lie. It's such a like, I was like, I can't be the only one out there, right? But then it was also just like, where out of like all the horror and sci-fi audio dramas out there is our mythology. It's, we've already said this before. This is like the first stories that we've told, and it's certainly like not going to be the last. But we are very hard to find, and I think we need to figure out how not to be as hidden.
Yeah, I think that's something that I struggle with, and I think all of us are gonna relate to that in some levels. Echo Box is tagged as fantasy on most podcast finders, and it's not fantasy. It's like real world storytelling, but because it's myth based, people think of it as fantasy. So we really need to, I think, create a genre of retelling podcasts, because I do think that people who listen to Echo Box and like the retelling aspect of it, even though it's modern world, no magic happening. Would also like, for example, to Hannah's podcast that I forgot the name. I'm so sorry.
Friday Night Bites.
Yes.
Kniggets. Friday Knight.
But also, like, even though it has more fantasy elements in it, and it's very different from the horror podcast, like you said. Like I love horror audio dramas. I love sci-fi audio dramas. I think they're so cool. But I also think that our little niche of storytelling needs to have a space too.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like the word fantasy either for our genre. Mine is more mythical, magical, so it does fit, but I just feel like it is a very vague word to be using to describe. There's high fantasy, there's medieval fantasy, there's all types of fantasy out there, and to just generalize all of us is really devaluing all of us as well. Especially since I also feel like a lot of us have, action and adventure as well with our stories. We have drama, we have comedy, all these things. And I actually think in Apple Podcasts and stuff like that, I think I'm under drama, because I think there's only drama, sci-fi, and comedy for fiction.
Is that it?
I think so.
I don't remember what I thought, but yeah.
And it's kind of just like, how is anybody gonna find us through those gigantic genre categories?
Mm-hmm.
I know, yeah, we were on the drama list. Like it was like, when we were releasing, it was like, the top whatever podcast. Like we were getting featured in the drama category, which like sure, I guess, because like
Yeah.
in the comedy
Exactly.
category was like a lot of more like a bunch of comedians sitting around a microphone like chatting about
yeah, I would consider Echobox more comedy podcast than fantasy, but then like I'm gonna be on the same list as Sinafe or something like that. That doesn't make any sense. But I think that the drama works for the fiction aspect, but then like we have the something else to it that like just drama doesn't encompasses at all.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like that. You brought up like what your podcasts are tagged as, and like coming up with a different genre, like word for the genre. I think that's an interesting question, and my kind of like scholar brain is firing because I like study genre as part of what I do. But I guess like I think in adaptation is one of the words that we're looking for here, because adaptation covers a kind of wide range of
I really
things.
do like adaptation. I think it works.
Yeah, adaptation theory is actually kind of one of the big things that I study, because I'm looking at contemporary like queer adaptations of Greco-Roman myth, and I'm looking at all sorts of things. Like I'm looking at podcasts, I'm looking at video games, I'm looking at books, I'm looking at comic books, I'm looking at movies, TV shows, and like an adaptation can be like remaking Clash of the Titans from 1983 and remaking it in 2012 and making like almost the same movie. It can also be like what both Angela and Isabella, what your podcasts are, which are like kind of using elements of a thing and retelling a story or telling stories in a different way. So I think adaptation is a useful word. But then the question for me is then, okay, if we think adaptation is a useful word, or even adaptation's useful, Dan, for your podcast too, because it is an adaptation of these like 60s like Mexican luchador films. That's what it is. It's an adaptation, and it's an adaptation that's also like crossed mediums. It's now you've made a film into an audio, brought it into an audio medium. But then the question is, okay, how do you popularize the word adaptation? Like,
yeah,
how do you make people
in our community, but like then it's how do you make it not a circle jerk of we're all calling it an adaptation, so how do you get it to other people?
I mean, I have a hard enough time trying to tell people what an audio drama is. Like, wait, so like it's a drama, so it's like sad. Like, no, it's like fun.
Do you know? Yeah, if we're talking outside the audio drama community, like you're like, I have a podcast, and then they're like, oh, that's so cool. What do you talk about? And I'm like, I don't talk about anything. It's a fiction podcast.
I always say FKF is a comedy fiction podcast, and then I say like it's like a radio play. Like it's like a play, but it's in audio audio form, and people are like, oh, I get it. Okay, that people get it that way. But yeah, I feel like it also comes down to like networking. Like, how do you make connections? Like, this is awesome. This is networking, right? Like, I know I've met all of you guys. Now I could talk to you guys for like hours about all these things are really interesting. And then, we can be aware of each other's work, and then other work by other creators who do the same thing. But then how do you appeal to somebody outside the community? And I also wonder if it's like, should we also be trying to appeal to people who do the same kind of work but don't do podcasts? Like, should we be bringing in like, hey, let's talk to the person who wrote the Chili ad, or let's talk to I don't know,
the writer of Lar Olympus. which is
Yeah.
the webcomic.
Yeah,
Rachel
or let's
Smith.
talk to there's like a couple artists on I know on Twitter and Tumblr who make like a lot of comics on like wrestlers and like their like kayfabe persona. Like, do we talk to them? Like, do we bring them into the community? What do we do? How do you?
Yeah.
Where does the community end, or where are the borders, and how malleable are they? How easily can we walk across them?
I do think it's different for adaptation than it is for when you're talking like horror podcasts. If a person is a fan of horror movies, they're a fan of horror movies. They probably don't read horror books and they don't listen to horror podcasts. So like they are very centered on the medium. I think that for adaptations, it's a bit different. I think that like if someone is very into wrestling, they would love the Luchador, even if they don't usually listen to podcasts. So I do think that maybe reaching out, like in my case with EchoBox, reaching out to other people who are into Percy Jackson, for example, the Percy Jackson fandom. I can reach out to them, and everyone who I did say, oh, you like Percy Jackson? You should listen to my podcast. They do like the podcast because they do like the myths. And I think that this is the line that we have to kind of follow, but it's also harder because then we have a much broader community to reach, which is not just like talking audio drama with your friends.
Right. Yeah, I do. Sorry, no, go for it.
Yeah, because that was definitely part of our process, like reaching out. Like we did a contest during season 1 as we were releasing it, that if you listen to all the episodes, you could win a trip to go see a wrestling show. So like we're like, oh yeah, if people just like wrestling and they want to see more wrestling, like they'll check us out. And it's definitely been really cool. And we definitely have brought people in who've said like, oh, I've never listened to one of these before. This is great because I'm familiar with wrestling. I'm familiar with Lucha Underground. Some people have been brought in specifically from Lucha Libre and the film. So like it's finding the little connections, I guess. But like in terms of breaking through into the mainstream, I don't know. It's tough because like talking about like adaptations, I know like there's a lot of folks out there, especially like maybe some of the first audio dramas I heard of are folks who are doing just like their own fan adaptations of copyrighted properties, like doing their own Marvel superhero thing as an audio drama, or Batman or Doctor Who or other things like that. And so that muddies the waters too, because everyone thinks like, oh, everything that's audio drama is just like a bunch of friends having fun, and it definitely is fun for sure. And I definitely
usually it starts like that, but then it's so much work. Like I think all of us can vouch for that. Like it's so much work, and we're having fun when we're doing it because we love it, but also it's a serious creating thing, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. It's a job. Like no matter if you're being paid or not, if you have, fancy software or fancy mics, it's still a full-time commitment that you're doing to creating this project and sharing it with the world.
Oh, absolutely. So many people worked on our podcast. Like I think including cast and crew and everything, like maybe like more than 20 people like had
I think I'm at that cap too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really thankful for all the people who stepped forward to jump in on this, because it's definitely still a labor of love at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
as we're going into season 2.
Labor of love is a wonderful word for it, because it's a labor.
Yeah,
but we love to do.
Why wasn't one of Hercules' 12 labors
making a podcast? Oh my gosh. Okay. Pitch, guys.
That's our next podcast. A podcast about Hercules making a podcast.
I just feel like, he has like giant hands. He's like trying to type out the script. And absolutely
Yeah,
failing at it.
Can't
we
lock
did
into
say
the cloud.
Yeah, we did say that Odysseus would have a very obnoxious podcast, but I do think
That's true.
Hercules would have an even more obnoxious podcast.
Yeah, it could be fun. Could be fun.
I would
Yeah.
like to see Theseus and Hercules collab. Where's their
Oh my
morning
gosh.
show? I would like to see that.
But yeah, I do feel like right now, at least for getting shows out there, it is still mostly word of mouth. And also, if any fans out there, please like and review and follow all of us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all that.
Tell a
and whatnot.
friend. Tell a friend.
Follow us on Twitter, all that jazz. It really, I think we said this. I don't remember if we were saying this in the live stream or not, but it really is also being a influencer / content creator now, as well as being a podcaster, to getting our stuff out there. Like, it's no longer just making the podcast. That I feel like is actually the easier part now. It's actually the next step, which is getting it out there and telling people like, hey, can you listen to this?
Yeah. And I do think that I know that people say like, oh, you're a podcaster, you must love the sound of your voice. No, I don't. I hate it. And I don't want to tell people, I don't want to keep telling people to listen to my podcast, but you do have to do that. So people get to know your work. And like, I believe in the work and in the finished product and the story. And I love my voice actors and my crew, but keep that push going is very hard. And I think that a lot of artists and creators relate to that. I have a lot of friends who draw, and they also have the struggle with social media and having to be a content creator, not only a creator on itself. And it's a whole different topic for for hours and hours of discussion.
The guy who plays Arthur in our podcast, Ian Kennedy. Ian, if you're watching, hi. Much love. He literally made business cards with FKF, and he would hand them out like you would just
that's
go out
so
and hand them to people. And I hope that at least a few of them listened.
Someone does.
It was a great idea.
I have.
Yeah, we actually did the same thing. We have Luchador business cards too.
That's incredible.
I want
one. My partner had a really great. He had us put a QR code on it, so all you have to do is just take out your phone, and it'll take you to the first.
That's
episode.
so smart.
So do we get autographed Dan Fletcher Luchador business cards or?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Good. I'll frame it. It's going on my wall.
I just have the added thing that like when I do tell people that I have a podcast, they're like, "Oh, that's so cool. What's it about?" And then I say, "Oh, it's in English," and then everyone's like, "Oh." Like I do have a lot of Brazilian friends who listen to it, but like most people, I can just go talking to people about it. But I do have Cor, my co-creator, who's all around. She's in Savannah, I think. So she does those kind of. She said they're gonna print stickers and just plus it around her anniversary.
Cute. I think another thing we haven't really talked about, and I know Ashton is also Latinx, but I feel like a good chunk of us is a person of color. And it's definitely another thing that we haven't discussed with being a minority in podcasting, and how that may also affect who we are in the industry.
Yeah. I'm white, but I am Latina, so like I have that kind of ethnicity thing going on, and I know that one big struggle that I have, and then I still have, and then I'm still getting over it, is my accent and certain words that my mouth refused to form the proper nouns or thing around it. But it's also something that making Echo Box and voicing Echo has been helping me be more comfortable with my accent too. So, yeah. I think that
we
that's
actually
the biggest
had,
thing I deal with. No problem. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, same thing. Yeah, I am white Hispanic Latinx, for me and my family, one of our favorite movies growing up was the Selena movie from the '90s. Everyone was on that, and there's a bit in it where you're never American enough for the Americans, you're never Mexican enough for the Mexicans, and I think for our podcast it fits that. There were a couple really, really, really awesome luchadors I would have loved to get on the show, and I know they do like they speak English, but they would have been more comfortable working in Spanish, and like in our show is primarily in English, and they kind of bounced off of that. It's like, oh man, so like if we'd done it in Spanish, you could have done the thing, but like it's you have to pick your audience, and
right.
Wanted to go, our Spanglish is our go-to language, but that's real cool. But it's definitely a thing too. It's to making sure you're spreading the message right, that like you're not setting the wrong expectations. A couple of people have like listened to our show thinking that it's going to be like us just talking about what's going on in wrestling, so it's hard to really communicate everything out there. And they're like, whoa, there's like a story here, like what's going on.
Yes,
there's just some
listen.
things. There's just some things that you explain every time, and people will still not get it.
But it's definitely interesting. I didn't even think about like other languages and other audiences as well, who we have to maybe catch their eye of. I've tried. I think YouTube does do auto captions. I'm not sure how well it is, but I have been posting like our episodes also on YouTube. So hopefully, if there is an international crowd, it's like the closest I can offer to them as a possible translation. But it's definitely something that probably very soon we also have to consider about how to expand, not just domestically, but also globally and everything like that.
Yeah, and I know there's the accessibility of it, angle of it as well, where I know there's a lot of folks who like to listen to podcasts with a transcript they can read along with. We did our first couple episodes on YouTube with the transcript available, and just didn't have a lot of pickup on it. So like if people are out there listening, they're definitely want to see the rest of them with transcripts. We definitely want to put it out there, but it's like just that extra bit of labor when we're already stretched so thin that it's really hard to find time for, even though it is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I have the transcripts up on the website of the podcast, but I will admit that it took me, I think, several months to get the last half of the like episode 1 to 5. I was updating with the episode, it was all perfect, but then episode 6 to 10, it took me like months to get it up on the website properly. But now I want to be better about this on season 2 as well. But like I said, and we have as much as we have a big casting crew, like 20 people, like we said, we have people wearing so many hats, especially on the crew side. So like so many people doing so much stuff, and mostly for free. So it's also like they have their day jobs and their college and all those sort of things. So it's hard to have that balance and knowing when to let things drop or not. So like I mentioned before the live stream that I've been lackluster on social media for Rekordbox, and I know that's something that I left quietly for a bit because I was focusing on setting up recording dates and figuring out pre-production stuff before we could get started on season 2.
Yeah, it's a lot of hat wearing, a lot of I don't know how many people understand like it's we said it's a labor of love, but like not just like bringing the show from concept to actual creation, but then also getting the team together to work on it is already a hot mess with people's schedules. And then
war flashbacks.
War flashbacks.
And that's just recording. We haven't even gotten to editing yet.
I actually had a funny thing happen to me this week because I did all the time zones math. I have a spreadsheet with the call sheets for the episodes, and I have a little tab that's called Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey stuff because I was like, I need to sit down and put all the timelines. Then we did this, we recorded, and then we recently got a new sound designer on our team, and she's amazing. Her name is Georgia, and she's from Greece. And on an episode, we had a Greek word which we were using as a character's surname, and she was like, "Hey, it's pronounced wrong." So I was like, "Oh shit, okay." So, thank you for letting me know, but okay. And then I had to go and do pickups, and then so we can edit the thing properly. And it's just a lot of back and forth, but it pays off. I think we really pays off.
Oh yeah, I mean it's another thing where it's like I swing back and forth between like, this is a hobby, I don't need to give it 100%, but then I'm just like, no, people are listening to this. I have to make this the best it can be. And that's just my constant mood swing where it's just like, and usually it leads to I need to be a perfectionist right now, otherwise I will never be happy with whatever I do.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever, I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm like, no, I need to finish the story.
Right. It'll be like 2 a.m. and I'm like, I can't sleep. I need to fix that pronunciation.
We actually ended up re-recording.
The re-records.
I don't know how many. I think we had the first 3 episodes fully recorded, and then some people had done more, but we ended up re-recording everything after we had done recording the first time around, because we listened to it and we were like, yeah, it's good. And if we weren't trying to like put this out there and hopefully make money on it to at least pay our actors and our crew, then it would be great. But we need to redo it. So we ended up actually we didn't release till like 6 months after we originally planned, because then we went and re-recorded everything, and it turned out a lot better, and I'm glad we did it. But the trauma is really the only word I get.
No.
The trauma of it all.
I mean, Dan, you had to work with like other full-time professional, like they had their full-time job and then they were also voice acting. I can't imagine what scheduling that must have been like for you. Oh, Dan, how was it scheduling actual professionals?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was definitely like we really, really wanted to make sure the folks we wanted to work with, we did everything possible to make it as easy as possible for them to record the stuff. Like some of the guys we worked with, guys and women that we worked with, like had their own home recording system. Colt Cabana, famous, was like the wrestling podcaster. So he was like, oh man, I'm ready to go. He was super pro and knocked it out. But some of the other guys who were working like crazy schedules, like Dan Housen, he's really, really blowing up in it. It's really awesome because he's a fantastic guy. And he was traveling all over the place, and he's like, okay, I'm going to be in a hotel in the city for a while, I'm not going to have access to anything. So like, okay, we will ship you a microphone and a kit for you to do everything yourself, like wherever you are. And so he was able to do that like on the road in between wrestling shows and get those in, and
very nice,
and
very evil.
It was super professional, super great. And then it was a whole thing. We some of our recording was done in person with a bunch of folks all like huddled around a mic, or separate mics, like inside a recording studio. A lot of like the narrator who has our narrator has like a huge job, and his name's Alex. He's fantastic. And like a lot of stuff that was done like in my apartment. So like we just picked up stuff where we could, and we just have some marathon sessions. Our Fuego, our lead actor, like recorded in his closet in his family's house, both in Mexico and in Texas.
The recording in closets is so real.
Yes.
But it works. It sounds really good at the end of the day.
Yeah,
so it's really cool. So like, yeah, like it's and honestly, like for our second season, it's gonna be a little bit easier because I think people are so much more acclimated now to, you know, being on mic in their regular lives because of the last, you know, couple of years. One of our actors, you know, like we'll record him in person when he gets back to Thailand, but another one is she's gonna be out in Miami for the whole time. But she's like, okay, but like since we recorded, because we recorded all of her stuff in person for season 1, for season 2, she's like, yep, I got my a whole home recording setup that I've like just built up on my own in between the seasons. Like, okay, great, that's super easy. And you know, and we're going to be able to do like more kind of remote recording live, where, you know, we're still getting that that back and forth between the characters, which is so crucial to making something feel alive. And do that, even though like our editors, our editor Mike, who did most of season 1, Mike Mason, or all of season 1. Never mind. I shouldn't cut it. So much work.
Credit him for
good job, Mike.
You deserve it.
Yeah, like
full credit.
You could never tell sometimes like when two people were in the room and when they weren't recording, because he did a really great job with that. And yeah, but I don't know. So I'm optimistic about season 2, that I think everyone's gotten from, you know, from our performers to our tech people, like everyone has gotten like just a little more polished, a little more comfortable. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. Ready? Where is it?
Yes.
Let's go, Dan.
I mean, to hint a little bit where we're at. So yeah, we're polishing up our scripts. Our second season is going to be a lot bigger than the first. Season 1 was 5 episodes. Season 2 is either going to be 8 or 9 episodes, depending on whether we want the finale to be like super long, like Stranger Things was this last year.
I'm wiggling in excitement. This is awesome.
And what I'm really excited about is the next part, where we're going to start casting. You know, we're bringing back a lot of our folks from season 1, but there's going to be a whole bunch of new roles because we're going to like a whole new locale, and we're dealing with new gods, new situations, new monsters.
That's so
And
cool.
you know, we definitely want to see like, ooh, you know, what wrestlers we can reach out to bring into it, because I've been lucky to interact with some folks on Twitter, and they're like, oh, we talked to, you know, like some, you know, some folks that people might know. I won't say anything too much, but they were like, oh, we talked to so and so who was in season 1, and they told us about what it was like working with you, and so like if you're doing season 2, like we'll want to talk with you. So
That's so cool.
Nice.
That's so exciting. I can't wait to see who you're going to work with. So fun.
I do want to hear about everyone's next seasons. Someone did make a comment real quick. Arthur Draconi. He wanted to go back about the genres thing. As far as name for the genre of myths being retold or remixed, have any of you heard of the term myth punk? I'm still a little hazy on the exact definition, but I believe it is described as mythology being given a postmodern makeover.
I never heard of it, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like, I guess it's steampunk, but with mythology instead.
Cyberpunk, but it would yeah. I would say the term is a very good podcast name.
Oh, that would be a good podcast name, actually. Quick, someone copyright it right now.
TM.
Yeah.
Well, if anything, we've got three podcasts to pitch so far from this live stream.
We're doing great, but we trademarked them all. So
yes,
yeah.
No one else
is watching. Don't get any ideas. TM.
But it's all, yeah, I do want to say it is great. We all have 1 or 2 seasons finished and we are all working on the next. Can we give a little bit of a sneak peek as to what is to come with everybody? Or is it hush hush?
Mine is a little bit more in the open, just because I do think that I don't know if it's just me or in my little bubble, but when I think Greek myths, Hades and Persephone are such a powerful thing. So we are working with Hades and Persephone on season 2, and let me just say that me and Cor listened to a lot of Hades Town while we were writing it.
Good soundtrack.
Have you guys played Hades, the game?
Yes.
Yes, I love it so much.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Oh, that's something we could also. I don't know how long you guys could stay, but that is a whole other topic about exploring all the different adaptations that is currently in mythology, with like video games to Broadway shows to who knows what's next.
I could talk about that forever because it's my dissertation. They're going to make me a doctor about that. So.
I won't be a doctor about that, but I could also talk about it forever. Can I read your thesis?
Yeah, I'll send it. I'll send an autographed copy, and you can put it up on your wall next to Dan's autograph.
Yes, so Luchador, have business a nice wall.
Yeah.
I've got lots of space.
Yeah.
What about for FKF? Are you guys any new things to announce yet? Or
so I don't have anything to announce, like dates wise. We're still writing season 2. I don't know. We also don't know what production will look like for season 2. So it is happening. We just don't know when or how, but what you can expect is we pick up right where we leave off in season 1, which is kind of a bit of a cliffhanger. And we start immediately there. We're going to bring in a couple of more characters from the Arthurian legends. A few new ones, few new villains, few new friends.
I love both of those.
So if your favorite knight or favorite character from the Arthurian legends didn't make it into season 1, there is a chance that perhaps you'll see them in season 2. But listen to season 1 first, wherever you get your podcast.
That would help. So to then prep for season 2.
Then you know what to look forward to. Yeah.
We I forgot to say, but we are looking forward to starting to release season 2 of EchoBox in October. So we are
that's
very
soon.
Close.
That's in like 11 days.
Yes, very soon. We are working towards it. I actually DM'd Core today. Like, actually, I'm lying. Core DM'd me. We need to set dates, and I was like, I know. We need to set dates.
Like, don't look at me. It'll come out when it comes out. I know. I was supposed to also have an October release date, and this summer was just so hot. I was like, no, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm not recording in a closet. Sorry, it's not happening. Hopefully we will go into production in October, and then we will release next year, probably end of January or beginning of February. I have lots of new creatures for you all to meet. Ooh. I have learned from season 2. I'm leaning less from animal creatures and more towards speaking creatures. So I have some auditions opening up soon, so people can be some very fun creatures on our show.
I'll keep my eye out for the casting call.
Yes, please audition. We are going to have 12 episodes instead of 10. We have our fan favorite Sam and Terry are coming back. We have a new person, Jessica, also coming back. Lots of new characters, lots of new creatures, and I am doing just fine with all of that.
I can see you're thriving. Thriving.
Love writing that script with a 5-person scene, and then you're like, who wrote this? Who thought this would work?
Our the first episode of Friday Night Fights is with almost every single character in the podcast, the very first episode. And we were like, why? Why did we? I mean, how else would we do it? But why? Why did we do this?
It is very interesting writing and then like recording and being like, wait a minute, we got to change something.
It was a terrible idea. I did write Alex/Echo doing a lot of embarrassing shit on season 2, and then I have to record that because I am Echo, and I'm like, why did I do
that? Writer self is so different from voice actor or director self. It's just what was I thinking 2 months ago?
Writer self
doesn't appreciate the talent.
No.
Okay, but I think we are going to wrap it up. We've been chatting for about an hour and a half now. I do want to also, give you guys time to plug in our social media because, like I said, we are all influencers now, apparently. So we will go with Echo Box. Isabella, do you want to go, if you want to share your personal handle and also maybe like Echo Box's handles and all that, whatever you want to go for it.
Yeah, I'm not that active on Twitter, but I am on Isa's Rights. I talk there about the pirate brain rot that has taken over my head, which is Our Flag Means Dead. My original writing.
Ask if you'd seen that, but I didn't because I figured, yes, you have.
Yes, I am
it's a pointless question.
I am completely obsessed. My original fiction is suffering from it, but it's fine. And on you can find Echo Box wherever you get your podcast as Echo Box Pod. We are currently setting up a Patreon too if you want to help us out, pay our cast and crew. And see you in October, hopefully.
Yay, so excited. And then Hannah for Friday Night Fights.
So Friday Night Fights, that is night with a K. That is Friday Knight Fights. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Twitter at FKF Tweets. We're on Instagram at FKF Grams. We are on Tumblr at Friday Night Fights. You can follow Ashton at Popsicle Mike on Twitter and Twitch. You can follow me if you want. My handle on Twitter is H2_Steel, STEELE. I mostly just tweet about wrestling and hockey. So if that's not your jam, don't follow because that's what you're going to see. I would also like to plug another podcast that Ashton created and that I am a part of sometimes called Written in the Cars. It is a podcast wherein Ashton and our wonderful friend Paige, and more often than I would like me, are trying to solve the mystery of the Pixar's Cars universe.
Oh my gosh, that's
Ashton
amazing.
has been cursed by God until this universe is solved. So if you enjoy conspiracy theories or the Pixar's Cars movie and now television show, which ruined my life immediately, give it a listen. It's really funny. And I promised Ashton I would plug it.
I'm getting the sense that Ashton really likes puns.
Yeah. Yes, that would be correct.
I have so many questions about the car.
Yeah, me too. But I feel like I needed this information beforehand so we could talk about it more.
And then Dan, where can we find you and the Luchador?
Yes. So we, if you want to listen to the show, you can find links to our like Audible page or wherever on luchadorpod.com. We are the Luchador Pod on Twitter, Instagram, technically TikTok, Facebook, I guess. I don't know. I haven't looked at the Facebook in forever.
Oh yeah, we have a Facebook too. You reminded me, Dan. I'm sure it's just Friday Night Fights. I'm pretty sure I created that page. Go find a luchador on Facebook, people. Show your mom and your wine aunt.
And on TikTok. Because audio dramas are perfect for the medium of short videos.
Yeah, they're the same.
Yeah, same thing. So good. And then I think that's everything. We do have a Patreon as well. If you want to help make season 2 the best everything it can be. We also have merch linked on our TeePublic store from luchadorpod.com if you want to buy stuff with little luchadors on it. That's the thing.
Cute. For me, you can find all of Residents of Persephone Park at Persephone Park. I think on everything. I was very lucky.
Including
that handle.
Facebook?
I think so. It was thankfully there's no actual park named Persephone Park, because otherwise that would have been very awkward.
there is a company called EchoBox. That's why I am EchoBox Pod on everything.
Yes, I'm so obscure that nobody else has this name, which is a good and bad thing, because I'm pretty sure half my audience does not know how to spell Persephone Park. You can find me at Girl Made of Jade on most platforms as well. And we are currently crowdfunding, I think, for like 2 more days on Indiegogo. If you go on that website and search Residents of Persephone Park, you should see us there. And we also have a Patreon that will start once season 3 starts.
Do you think we would reach more people if we all advertised on MySpace?
I think this is what I need to do.
MySpace
journal.
MySpace was the original music platform, right? So audio music, you might have something.
A Dreamwidth blog, perhaps, might get the word out.
A Zanga.
Yes, Zanga. Oh my God. Now that's a word I haven't heard in a long time.
Okay, well, someone said Dreamwidth. Well, this was great. I lost my train of thought.
I'm still thinking about the cars.
You should apply. She says she's looking for people to be on her podcast.
I was about to say, I guess Ashton's in the chat. I was going to say, listen, we're always looking for people to talk about cars with. If you want answers, listen to Written in the Cars. If you want to just be part of it, we'll take anyone as a guest on Written in the Cars.
I am not qualified when I order an Uber. I never look at the model of the car because I cannot recognize the car.
The less you know about cars, either the real life vehicle or the films, the better.
So I'm perfect for the job. I'm perfect for the job.
We do talk about wrestling cars, I believe, in a recent episode.
Yeah, there's like a short, right, where one of the
how does that work?
Car is a wrestler, right? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah, and there's a demolition derby. There's I was just wondering, what does a luchador car look like? What is that? What is that like? It has to be body paint, right? And so then do they remove it? Or are they full time? I have so many questions about, Dan, maybe you should come talk to us about wrestling cars. I have so many questions and no answers.
I don't think we'll get your answers. I'm sorry.
Maybe I just need to contact Owen Wilson and ask him. Owen, what do you think?
Okay, this has been great. Thank you guys for coming by and chatting. I will also, when I upload this on YouTube, I will put everybody's links and handles so it's easier for people to find you guys. This has been great. Let's do this again, maybe. I feel like there's so much more we haven't gotten a chance to talk about. And it was so nice to meet you guys all in person. I'm so excited to hear everyone's second season. more myths, more fun, more gossip, all the things.
Thank you so
And
much
yeah.
Thank you so much for
organizing
inviting me.
this, hosting
Yeah.
it. It was really awesome to meet all you guys and chat with you. And I could keep going for hours. This was really, really fun.
Yeah, I loved it. It was so much fun. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Problem. All right. Have a good night, guys.
Bye.
Bye.